afternoon, everybody. 2 more talks before drinking, okay? Anyway, I'm very happy to share the results of our ongoing study about artificial turf. As you can easily recognize, the use of third generation artificial turf is becoming very, very popular recently. And a few years ago, a female World Cup in Canada, 2015, all the matches were played on 3G turf pitch. So far, several proposed studies say there was no clear differences for the risk of injuries and the players' playing pattern. However, those studies are not enough convincing for players and coaches. As the study Anderson et al. Suggested, players still have all negative impression on 3D turf and greater physical effort they feel necessary when they play on 3D turfs. Our research group then field works on the shock absorbency of 3D turfs. However, we still unknown how much these properties affect user performance on the players. So, we aim to clarify the impact of surface properties of natural diamond 3D turf on surface spike action and zigzag run performance. We recruited 5 university-level circuit players. The number of circuits is very small, but in that condition, that was maximal size for us. So I will explain later. And we pick up 4 types of circuit pitches. First is natural turf, which are well maintained and regularly used for soccer match. And the other three types of 3D turfs. One is the 3D turf with underneath shock pad. Another one is 3D turf with underneath shock pad, but produced by different company. And the last one is 3D turf without underneath shock pad. That is a cheaper option. And we set exact same zigzag run course on each type of turf. And players are asked to run to complete zigzag run twice on each type of turf. But to conduct this study, we face one big difficulties because we need 4 types of turfs, but that which are regularly used and well maintained. But we put natural turf pitch here, and while the other three artificial turf was a bit far away, 60 kilometers away. So anyway, we decided to travel for 60K. As you can see, we started in the in the morning on the top left, and finally, night has come, and we just finished the bit of night, and we exhausted a lot. And why we need travel? This is a good question, because we already know the daily maintenance on natural turf has a huge impact of its property. As you can see, this is the daily maintenance, pushing daily. This is a stress strain curve of natural turf, well maintained in the left line. And the other 2 natural turf, they have no maintenance. So, as you can see, there's a huge differences regarding the stress strain curves for natural turfs. So we need natural turf, well maintained, also regularly used for soccer match. So this is tasks. Oh, I can go up. No. Yep. Players are asked to perform zigzag run, exact same course, and each type of surface twice, like this. landing time was measured by their foot cells. And also, they were quite general kind of spike, and gyro sensor was instrumented in the spike, and they run using that spike. And also, surface property was measured by new type of drilling test. This is the result of landing time. You can see the blue bar in front is landing time of natural path, and red green was switch tap with shock part, and the purple one is the switch tap without shock part. We can see a clear trend. Player can run fastest on a switch tap without shock part, followed by natural path, and players get slower when they running on switch tap with underneath shock part. It's quite interesting because the shock part switch tap is very much expensive, more expensive version. That means we pay more money on the pitch. That makes players slower. It's very interesting. So we explored about factors regarding the softness during we explored the relation between running time and some property regarding the softness. Energy reduction, bulk information, some of that. And we just looking at the ranking of this time, and first line shows the ranking of running time. Without shock part in process, followed by natural part, the difference was quite small. But the difference with the switching part with shock parts is quite substantial. There are significant differences. And we can find the exact same analogy for surface deformation.
多分そのパッドが入ってるか入ってないかとかで
is more than the 3,000 plus 22 millimeters.
その辺も一匹の鳥さんがめちゃくちゃしてますね。
Approximately about 3.0 millimeters. So that is our major finding. Yeah, that is quite logical. Maybe you can try in the next morning, because we just run on the surface with more deformed, like beach. We get slower. Another finding is spike angular motions. As you can see, the players from previous task approximately same number of steps, 30 steps. So that's a good result. So we can go to compare each steps. So we compare the range of dose flexion as used as the natural curve values as independent variables, and looking at the relationship. If there are no differences between natural curve and switching curves, all the values comes on the around the analytical line. But you can see, as you can see, there are many variables in this area. That means when we run on the artificial curves, spike dose flexion motion was emphasized. Now finding is peak inversion angular velocity. This is also peak angular velocity was emphasized when we running on artificial curve. So the conclusion. So surface deformation of switch tap has significant impact on tensile performance. Should inversion angular velocity and range of dose flexion would be emphasized when landing on switch taps. More deformable artificial turf restrain performance and to induce large range of motion and faster angular velocity of thought. And these features might link to negative overall information and more physical effort they feel to need. is my sponsor. And new information, new book is coming to with me, and you are over there. Thank you very much for your attention.
Questions? Okay.
Wolfgang Puttersram, Sport University. Thank you, Hero, for the talk. You showed the relation between how much the turf deformed at the running performance. But I was wondering if you also looked at the traction or rotational resistance.
Yeah. That is the point. Because this is why we are running on the audition. Our foot is more quickly devoted. Maybe Shibita has more traction than natural part. Yeah, that is the point we need to look at. Yeah.
So, but you didn't measure that mechanically because there are those lean tests as well.
Yeah. We done, but this is kind of part of the study, but we didn't make it. So that is important. Thank you.
Here, are there any rules regarding which type of artificial turf you're allowed to use? So you have two different types of artificial turf.
Yeah, artificial turf. Yeah. We tested the I can't name the company because
I don't care about the company.
Yes. This is the one type is artificial turf. One type is a more luxury option. Is artificial turf is underneath shorter like this one.
Yeah, but I'm allowed to use the turfs without track pad.
One approved, one feedback.
There is feedback. Yeah. It's good question. People recommend short paths. Okay, and they assign people choose the 3 stars, something like that. Yeah, it's a good business.
Hi, Howard Listrom, Hospital for Special Surgery. Wonderful talk. I was wondering if two things. One, if your data might suggest that artificial surfaces could be more fatigue producing to the athlete.
Yeah.
And the second is which surface do you feel is safer for the athlete?
Safer. Yeah, that is a good point. I think so far we just want to get the angular motion. But we need if we need more range of motion, larger range of motion, that might induce fatigue. For example, around the my results say the dorsal flexion motion is emphasized. Dorsal motion, especially due to the tibial muscle, is small muscle. That might cause partial fatigue for the small muscle. That might influence player. They come to feel as aware of so much fatigue because our small part of muscle is particularly fatigued when. And what's the second question? Sorry. Safety.
And it's kind of a follow-up to the former question about rotation.
Yeah, safety.
You think about rotational release coefficients and stiction and how the ACL could be strained.
It's there is many types of safety, because we looking at the shock absorbency, because when sometimes the players are falling down on the surface very awkward position, so we just tested a high impact lead and looking at the shock absorbency. That is the shock part, under the shock part has more absorbed shock. Yeah, but we think that is safety, is mechanically, but we should carefully looking at what is because we are human beings sometimes react differently. Because probably we run on softer surface, we need our ankle is more movable. That might link to for example ankle something, but we didn't look at it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hero. Thank you. All right, our last presentation today before we put it is by Yung Wen, titled Effects of Plate Stiffness on Footwear Comfort and Performance in American Football, a randomized controlled trial. Please welcome Yung.
Thank you. Since I have the honor of being the last presentation of the day, I'm going to try to cut this to about 2 minutes. So you can get out of Before I start, I wanted to disclose right off the bat that this project was funded by Adidas. And as we move into thinking about, most of our lab is really focused on injury risk, injury prevention, and treatment. And we're really focused on the lower extremity. And when we look at injuries of the foot, most of our interest has been looking at turf toe injuries or hyperextension or sprain of the first MTP joint. In America, especially in American football, this is a debilitating injury. Many times it's season injury, the season ending, and to a certain extent, it may actually become career ending. Long-term effects could cause some degenerative joint changes relative to that. Obviously, we all know that it is some type of hyperextension mechanism, and there is some thought that maybe it's a trend towards some lighter or more flexible footwear. Once someone has this injury, common treatments commonly involve trying to limit the amount of extension in that first MTP joint, mostly through some type of taping or strapping, but also some shoe modifications. And the thought is, if you can make the shoe stiffer, it will limit some of that hyperextension of the first MTP joint, maybe reducing injury, but also maybe reducing the chance of re-injury relative to that. But as we heard in this session, that stiffening the shoe potentially could influence perceived comfort and functional performance. And these two variables are very important when it comes down to selecting whether they're going to use the cleat or not. So when we think about injury prevention and interventions, most of our stuff that we've done in our lab has been putting together exercises to intervene to reduce the risk of injury. And one of the biggest issues is compliance with that. So if you're not doing the intervention, you're not going to reduce the risk of injury. Same thing with this modification. It's a modification to reduce injury. So if they're not choosing the cleat, they're really not doing the intervention for it. So this is an important factor to understand when we think about injury risk and injury prevention. The other piece is that there's limited evidence in this youth high school population. So our purpose was to determine the effects of footwear stiffness modification on subject-specific assessments in a large cohort of American football players prior to and across during the football season. This was a large prospective study. It is a registered randomized control trial on 97 high school football athletes. We had a distribution of about a third of them were linemen, so, and then the other 2/3 were skill players. And we decided to analyze it separately. If you lump these together, their athletic ability or their athletic performance is much different. So lumping them together can kind of confound some of the results. We tested 2 cleats. One, which we dubbed Cleat 0, was a stiffer cleat, and then the second one was moderately stiff. I wouldn't, compared to the stiffer cleat, it was less stiff, and so when you look at least the testing of it, the 3-point bend test obviously shows a difference in the first cleat versus the second cleat. Probably throughout this talk, I'll talk about the stiff versus softer cleat, but it really is just moderately stiff. And then there's the testing on the fast flex of these cleats also. Now this was a very large study, and I'm only presenting, we also did lab-based measurements on this, but we also did field-based assessments. This talk would focus on the field-based assessments of it. We tested athletes using the Pro Agility or the 5-10-5. In America, it's in yards, so it's 5 yards. And so simply we used timing gates to measure the time that they completed this performance and their ability to perform this over 2 separate trials. We also did a modification of the L drill or the L test, where we did a T test. where the athletes were, it was 10 meters up to that first cone, 5 meters to the left, 5 meters to the right. They could choose whichever direction they wanted to go initially. They completed 2 trials of this, and we assessed the time using timing gates from start to finish with it. And the other variable that we looked at was a stationary counter movement vertical jump. Many of these tests are commonly used in the NFL Combine, and this is basically a pretty good assessment of overall power relative to this. We gave them a target, but we actually assessed this using a vert sensor to accurately get the distance of vertical height. So they would test in one shoe, and then they would basically rate their discomfort. And we assessed the discomfort basically 3 different ways. The first one was a VAS scale, similar to what has been presented, sliding a scale, and this was computerized, sliding a scale to indicate the comfort of different portions of the shoe. We also assessed it using a Likert scale, and then Kevin had presented previously of indicating areas of discomfort by clicking on certain areas of the foot. They basically tested one shoe, which was randomized, completed the discomfort survey, tested in the second shoe, completed this discomfort survey. So following all the field tests, what we basically asked them was, which cleat do you prefer? If you were going to play in, which one do you prefer? Following all the field testing in the cleat preference, we randomly assigned them a cleat to wear during the football season. And then what we did was we would text them. So in American football, in high school, you play 1 game a week, either Tuesday or Friday, either Thursday or Friday, and your practices during the week are very similar. And it's a 12-week season. So what we would do is we text them a link to a survey that they would fill out every Monday to assess their past week's perception. And I know this is a very busy slide. This is what it would look like. It included discomfort. It also included perceived performance, how they felt with running, cutting, and change of direction, and also included some injury data also. So when we look at all this analysis, so examining the preseason testing or the field testing, simple ANOVAs were run to look at differences in performance and comfort. And then we used the logistic regression to kind of identify those primary predictors of why they chose one cleat versus the other one. The in-season data over the 12 weeks, we used linear mixed effect models to actually examine differences across those 12 weeks. So when we look at the preseason data, the pro agility, the left side are the linemen, and the right side is the skill players. You don't see, you obviously see a difference in the performance time, lower meaning they did it quicker, but within each group there was really no difference between the 2 cleats. Vertical jump, different between groups, but no difference between cleats. And similarly for the T-test. So as expected, there were position differences in the 3 performance tests, but there were no obvious cleat differences in the preseason testing. When we look at the VAS rating of discomfort, you really don't see a huge difference between the ratings of the different parts of the shoe. If we really look closely, there is this trend towards maybe favoring cleat 1. In other words, there was more discomfort in the stiffer cleat. The Likert scale, very tough to interpret the Likert scale relative to what true meaning of it is. So there really wasn't much difference in the scores, but when we look at the change score, there might be maybe a little bit of a trend towards favoring the softer type cleat. And then regional discomfort, when we just look at it overall, there's no difference between the cleats. However, with some of the heat maps that the program uses, you can start seeing that there might be some differences where the stiffer cleat showed a little more on the plantar surface of discomfort. And when we do some regional analysis of it, remember the VAS score said they preferred cleat 0, and it may be explained by maybe more discomfort, preferred cleat trend towards cleat 1, but more discomfort in cleat 0. And then cleat preference, there really wasn't much difference in cleat preference. Maybe the skilled players, statistically there was no difference, but you can see the skilled players have a tendency to prefer the softer type cleat. So really the overall results looking at cleat preference is the logistic regression really identified two major predictors of cleat preference. And it was discomfort, composite score, and a t-test. And so the difference between the ratings in the comfort score and the performance in the t-test. And this classified 87.5% of cleat preference. And just on a side note, we use this to kind of start doing a PCA and a cluster analysis, but there is definitely no time to talk about how we're going to start classifying that. The in-season wear rate, we did see a little bit of a difference here. They did prefer, or they did wear the cleat 0 or the stiffer cleat a little more than the softer cleat across the season. There really wasn't much difference across the season in discomfort ratings. There is some thought that maybe specific weeks there was some differences, but overall when we ran the analysis there was no difference across there. And when we look at performance, there was no difference between the cleats or injury severity across the cleats between throughout the season. So really the bottom line is it looks like there are two primary predictors of cleat preference: perceived discomfort and t-test performance. And these are important things to consider when you're thinking about intervening and will they actually use the intervention or actually choose to use that cleat if they have this injury. I would like to acknowledge this is a big study and I can't do it alone. We have a great group of researchers and a research team, and I would like to acknowledge Adidas for their support in this. Thank you.
One best question from the floor about this paper. Anyone? That works for me. Right, real quick one. Difference between you split them, which I think is a very fair argument that is women and one. What differently, based on maybe what you've seen, do they need from the talk there?
Probably the biggest thing is, actually it's interesting and it's tough to get to this, is that those big linemen have big, fat, wide feet, you know, and they have different types of requirements. Whereas it's not surprising that skilled players maybe prefer the softer feet because they have to do more agility type stuff. But I think a fit component is an important piece.
Thank you.